62. The Cry of Distress.
The first chapter laid the ground, in general terms, for what we shall deal with in the fourth part. Now, the story begins.
The next day sat Zarathustra again on the stone in front of his cave, whilst his animals roved about in the world outside to bring home new food, also new honey, for Zarathustra had spent and wasted the old honey to the very last particle.
Zarathustra descended back to his cave. His wisdom and pride now look for new honey. The old ways of producing happiness have become boring.
When he thus sat, however, with a stick in his hand, tracing the shadow of his figure on the earth, and reflecting, verily not upon himself and his shadow, all at once he startled and shrank back, for he saw another shadow beside his own.
The metaphor of the shadow is an old one for Nietzsche. He saw himself as a lone wanderer, seeking knowledge in desolate places, with only his shadow to keep him company. Talking to his shadow was a metaphor for self-reflection. For a long time, ever since the end of Part 3, Zarathustra has done nothing but reflect on himself, on his human nature, but now we are told that he thinks about other things. And then he is startled, seeing something he hadn't seen in years, the shadow of another person.
And when he hastily looked around and stood up, behold, there stood the soothsayer beside him, the same whom he had once given to eat and drink at his table, the proclaimer of the great weariness, who taught, all is alike, nothing is worth while, the world is without meaning, knowledge strangleth. But his face had changed since then, and when Zarathustra looked into his eyes, his heart was startled once more. So much evil announcement and ashy grey lightnings passed over that countenance.
It's our old friend, the soothsayer. He was the one who got Zarathustra to start reflecting on the circularity of history, which eventually led him to create the philosophy of eternal return. He was the only character in the book who gained Zarathustra's respect for his intelligence, even if he didn't like his pessimistic attitude. Now, apparently, he thought up some new way to perturb him, and has come to seek him out.
The soothsayer, who had perceived what went on in Zarathustra's soul, wiped his face with his hand, as if he would wipe out the impression. The same did also Zarathustra, and when both of them had thus silently composed and strengthened themselves, they gave each other the hand, as a token that they wanted once more to recognize each other. "Welcome hither," said Zarathustra, "thou soothsayer of the great weariness. Not in vain shalt thou once have been my messmate and guest. Eat and drink also with me today, and forgive it that a cheerful old man sitteth with thee at table." "A cheerful old man," answered the soothsayer, shaking his head. "But whoever thou art or wouldst be, O Zarathustra, thou hast been here aloft the longest time. In a little while thy bark shall no longer rest on dry land."
The metaphor the soothsayer uses implies that we are experiencing another biblical flood, that the water is rising and is about to drown us all. Zarathustra, being so high above the rest of humanity, does not feel it yet, but he warns him that it will eventually reach him as well.
"Do I then rest on dry land?" asked Zarathustra, laughing. "The waves around thy mountain," answered the soothsayer, "rise and rise, the waves of great distress and affliction. They will soon raise thy bark also and carry thee away." Thereupon was Zarathustra silent, and wondered. "Dost thou still hear nothing?" continued the soothsayer. "Doth it not rush and roar out of the depth?" Zarathustra was silent once more and listened. Then heard he a long, long cry, which the abysses threw to one another and passed on, for none of them wished to retain it, so evil did it sound.
The soothsayer wakes him up from his happy state, and gets him to listen to what is happening to humanity, the humanity he left behind. Zarathustra hears a dreadful cry coming from below. It seems that something really bad is happening.
"Thou ill announcer," said Zarathustra at last, "that is a cry of distress, and the cry of a man. It may come perhaps out of a black sea. But what doth human distress matter to me? My last sin, which hath been reserved for me, Knowest thou what it is called?
Zarathustra still holds that none of this pertains to him. He is focused on his own happiness, and the distress of other people is not his business. But he feels that there is something coming for him as well, some sin that he is about to commit, and asks the soothsayer, the one who can see the future, what he thinks it will be.
Pity, answered the soothsayer from an overflowing heart, and raised both his hands aloft. O Zarathustra, I have come that I may seduce thee to thy last sin.
Pretty melodramatic dude, this soothsayer. He names the sin that Zarathustra is about to commit, and tells him it is pity. Indeed, Zarathustra told us how bad it is for the spirit to be pitiful. Can it be that he is about to forget his own teaching, and commit this sin?
And hardly had those words been uttered when there sounded the cry once more, and longer and more alarming than before, also much nearer. Hearest thou? Hearest thou, O Zarathustra? Called out the soothsayer. The cry concerneth thee, it calleth thee. Come, 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 it is time, it is the highest time. Zarathustra was silent thereupon, confused and staggered. At last he asked, like one who hesitateth in himself, And who is it that there calleth me?
We are awaiting Zarathustra's indignant response, waiting for him to tell the soothsayer where he can shove his pity. But before he gets a chance to answer, the cry of distress sounds again, sounding closer than before, and the soothsayer capitalizes on it to invoke the line that Zarathustra's shadow uttered in great events, about it being the highest time. In our analysis of that chapter, we interpreted that this was his subconscious telling him that it is time for him to undergo another self-surpassing, and on the next chapter he met the soothsayer, who presented him with the problem he needed to solve in order to self-surpass. The soothsayer, being the wily old fox that he is, knows that these words will trigger his companion, make him want to answer the call. And, indeed, Zarathustra forgets about the previous exchange, forgets that he was warned that he is about to sin, and wonders about the source of the call.
But thou knowest it certainly, answered the soothsayer warmly. Why dost thou conceal thyself? It is the higher man that crieth for thee. The higher man, cried Zarathustra, horror-stricken. What wanteth he? What wanteth he? The higher man? What wanteth he here? And his skin covered with perspiration.
Zarathustra, we know, despises all those figures that contemporary humanity considers lofty, blaming them for being the symptoms and the purveyors of the illness of the human spirit. But it seems that these higher men are the ones who are now seeking him. Those are not the disciples he was looking for.
The soothsayer, however, did not heed Zarathustra's alarm, but listened and listened in the downward direction. When, however, it had been still there for a long while, he looked behind and saw Zarathustra standing, trembling. O Zarathustra, he began with sorrowful voice, thou dost not stand there like one whose happiness maketh him giddy. Thou wilt have to dance, lest thou tumble down. But although thou shouldst dance before me, and leap all thy side leaps, no one may say unto me, Behold, here danceth the last joyous man.
The true nature of this conversation is beginning to reveal itself. The soothsayer didn't just come to warn Zarathustra, he came to seduce him. He is not just a soothsayer, but a philosopher of pessimism from Schopenhauer's school. These philosophers believe that only compassion can save man, and Zarathustra's philosophy stood in the way of that. The soothsayer believes that he can now convince even Zarathustra to switch to his side, and he even warned him that his intention is to tempt him to become pitiful. He looks back and sees that it is working. Zarathustra isn't as happy as he was at first. Once again, he has allowed the soothsayer to inflict him with bad thoughts. The soothsayer continues his manipulation, and reminds Zarathustra that he always managed to dance his way out of such bad thoughts, but says that this time he is not going to believe this dance, and know that he is just pretending to be happy. Humanity has fallen so far down, he believes, that pessimism has finally engulfed even Zarathustra.
In vain would anyone come to this height who sought him here. Caves would he find, indeed, and back caves, hiding places for hidden ones, but not lucky mines, nor treasure chambers, nor new gold veins of happiness. Happiness! How indeed could one find happiness among such buried alive and solitary ones? Must I yet seek the last happiness on the happy isles, and far away among forgotten seas? But all is alike. Nothing is worthwhile. No seeking is of service. There are no longer any happy isles.
Checkmate. Or so he believes. The soothsayer admits that there used to be happy isles to escape to, and there used to be lofty ideas in the mountains, through which one could revive their spirit and rise above the reality of vanities, all is vanity. This is how Zarathustra managed to defeat him the last time he tried to inflict his mind with pessimism. But now, he is confident, there are no such ideas left, and Zarathustra will have to succumb.
Thus sighed the soothsayer with his last sigh. However, Zarathustra again became serene and assured, like one who hath come out of a deep chasm into the light. "Nay, nay, 3 times nay," exclaimed he with a strong voice, and stroked his beard. "That do I know better. There are still happy isles. Silence thereon, thou sighing sorrow sack. Cease to splash thereon, thou rain cloud of the forenoon. Do I not already stand here, wet with thy misery and drenched like a dog?"
Zarathustra snaps out of it. He finally realizes the game that is being played, and he is ready to accept the challenge.
"Now do I shake myself and run away from thee, that I may again become dry. Thereat mayest thou not wonder. Do I seem to thee discourteous? Here, however, is my court. But as regards the higher man, well, I shall seek him at once in those forests. From thence came his cry. Perhaps he is there hard beset by an evil beast. He is in my domain, therein shall he receive no scathe, and verily there are many evil beasts about me."
Zarathustra reminds the soothsayer that this is his court, and here he sets the rules. This is the domain of optimism and happiness, not pessimism and sorrow. These words, however, make him want to go help the one who is crying in distress, since he, too, is in his court, and should therefore be happy. With that, however, he actually does allow himself to be hooked by the soothsayer, and acts out of compassion.
With those words Zarathustra turned around to depart. Then said the soothsayer, "O Zarathustra, thou art a rogue. I know it well. Thou wouldst fain be rid of me. Rather wouldst thou run into the forest and lay snares for evil beasts. But what good will it do thee? In the evening wilt thou have me again. In thine own cave will I sit, patient and heavy like a block, and wait for thee."
Realizing that he got Zarathustra to play his game, the soothsayer wants to stick around and see how it plays out.
"So be it," shouted back Zarathustra as he went away, "and what is mine in my cave belongeth also unto thee, my guest. Shouldst thou, however, find honey therein, well, just lick it up, thou growling bear, and sweeten thy soul. For in the evening we want both to be in good spirits. In good spirits and joyful, because this day hath come to an end, and thou thyself shalt dance to my lays as my dancing bear. Thou dost not believe this? Thou shakest thy head? Well, cheer up, old bear, but I also am a soothsayer." Thus spake Zarathustra.
Zarathustra accepts and invites him to wait for him in his cave. But he hints that this is now a battle between them, in which he, too, will try to get the soothsayer to switch to his way of thinking. The game is on.